I would say that both systems are so incredibly similar relative to the other options that it kind of doesn't matter. If we get either of them, then all of a sudden people will start studying them, and the next decade we'll have the answer. So I'm not super concerned about that. We're arguing over the last percent, whereas we're at 1%, and most people want to go to 70%, and we're like, oh, do we want 98 or 99%? We're not sure which one's which. Kind of in the end, let's just do it, and then we'll worry about that when we get there. Like incremental gain is the name of the game.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing that I think is really important. That like this is something that I run into with voting enthusiasts all the time is they get very stuck on that last percent. All the time I have people who come to me and like, well, I think we should make this alteration to approval voting to like cover this corner case, or this alteration to star voting to cover this corner case. And I'm like, the ratio of simplicity to accuracy is more important than the accuracy itself. Yes, you do need to have like a minimum amount of simplicity. You do need to have a minimum amount of accuracy, but like it is not worth the extra complexity to get that extra percentage point of accuracy.
Exactly. And that's why Center for Election Science tends to just stick with approval. It's arguably less complicated than the existing system.
Yeah,
like,
I made that
you have to make
argument.
more marks on a ballot, but your decision-making process is simpler.
You're removing a restriction that we currently have. Your vote consists of your support and lack thereof for each candidate. Our current system restricts you to only being able to support one candidate. Approval voting does away with that restriction, and it just allows you to show that support or not show it.
Exactly. I wrote a paper in when the referendum was going on in BC because they were trying to decide on systems, and I angered a few people on this actually. So they wanted a PR system, and I recommended approval voting, single member district approval voting, not PR. Very simple. I guarantee it would have won. And so what we ended up doing was going for some PR systems that none of them were particularly good. A lot of them were weirdly defined, and it lost. So the point there being is that approval is so simple, we could have convinced people very quickly and explained it very quickly. And what it does is it gets rid of vote splitting, which, as I said earlier, is one of the two major sources of low PR. So if you measure PR in the traditional sense, or it's kind of hard even in approval, but there are ways that you could come up with a way to define PR with approval voting. There's a bit of a spectrum, and single member plurality is probably the worst for PR, unless I don't know about a system. I guess maybe some sort of totalitarian government or something like that. But in democracy, that's the worst voting system. But I would say that approval voting is probably halfway down that line. And I've never seen simulations to quantify this. And then you have the fully PR things over here. So we could have easily gotten halfway. And that's halfway on one metric. There's dozens of important metrics. I'm never going to say proportional representation is the be all and end all of electoral reform. It is one thing. And I would also argue that it's probably not the most important thing. I don't know what the most important thing is. Probably expression. Being able to express yourself on the ballot is probably the most important thing to me.
I think it's important that people understand the method and appreciate it. If you achieve that and you have the expression in a way that is honest, then now you have enough data to create accurate results. And also, like, you're going to be equal. Oh, look, we just named the 5 pillars of the Equal Vote Coalition. A couple things I want to say. Number one, we got another comment. The same guy, iBods91. I still don't know who they actually are, but they're always commenting on stuff. They said, and I think they were researching this recently, they said, single district approval was used in Greece and it led to multi-party democracy. That's like a really important thing for people to understand. That like when some of the leading voting scientists, so whether you're talking about Warren Smith, Clay Shentrup, yourself, Jameson Quinn, whoever, say, hey, no, really, like, you don't need proportional representation is not the end-all be-all. Just getting a significantly better single winner is a big deal.
And like, because of accountability, I would say is the main thing. Our current system doesn't lead to accountability. So I've written to my MP dozens of times. I've never had a reply. I've bumped into him at outings, and he'll say nice stuff, and then I write to him the next day. He says, "Oh, I just didn't get the email. Write to me tomorrow." Right?
MP stands for Member of Parliament. It's equivalent to a representative.
Yeah, which is what's that in the States? Is that
we just say representative? We say the full word. It's obnoxious to type out all the time.
Right. So he has no incentive to actually talk to a single voter. He's all about narratives and that sort of thing, because it's about kind of landslide victories and strategy, vote splitting, all that sort of stuff. If things were very close and we had approval voting and he had a candidate that was going to run against him that was very similar to him, so would get very similar amount of votes, and I wrote an email to him and I said, all right, I'm gonna go to your competitor if you don't answer this email. He's gonna answer that email. One of the things that really matters to me is this kind of maintenance of this, say, lineage of democratic will. So if I'm getting a representative, that representative actually has to listen to and represent me. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like partisan systems where you vote for a party, and why I would also be reasonably happy with a single winner system, because you have a lot more of that. If you have a multi-winner system and you have 5 representatives, then they normally 5, you're going to write 5 emails and every single one can go, this is the other guy's problem, or the other 4 guys' problems, right? Or girls. And I kind of am uneasy about that. I've spoken to Australians that have that, but I've never spoken to an Australian that has talked to their member of parliament. Maybe I just don't know influential enough people down there, but I'm not sure that that's part of their system. And is that not part of their system because they don't have single member districts? I think there's a lot of investigations into these sorts of more political effects that could happen. And so I'm kind of uneasy about giving up having a one-to-one relationship with your representative. I'd rather improve that one-to-one relationship. And if we could do that, have a one-to-one relationship and have PR, then that is what I think is the kind of creme de la creme. And there are ways to do this. There's a guy up here in Canada, Byron Becker out of, I think, U of T, and he came up with a method to take any multi-winner system and turn it into a single district system and keep the PR. And so what I was saying earlier about it is, in order to get PR, you have to kind of pass information between districts. What you do is you just cluster 5 districts together. You have all the same number of people running in all the same ridings, but as soon as somebody from that riding's elected, all those other people lose. So they're taken out of the race. And so you represent a specific area, but you're in like this cluster of 5. And there's a trade-off here. Election science is all about trade-offs. The trade-off being that you may not get the 5 most representative. So the 5 most representative people that a regular multi-winner system may have won could have all been in the same district. But there's going to be strategy. People are going to move themselves around. Oh, I don't want to run in that district because that guy's there, or something like that. So I think that would maintain the one-to-one. It would give us PR. It works on any multi-winner system, so we don't even have to kind of go back and redo that. So that's kind of my goal, but it's not really in the narrative. It's not something that's talked about on virtually anywhere.